Okay, good morning everybody and welcome to AlphaBiolabs' latest webinar, Unscrambling SCRAM CAM, the power of alcohol monitoring. So my name's Andrew Priestley and I'm the marketing manager for the legal sector at AlphaBiolabs, and I'm joined as ever today by my colleague Ashley Friday, who's our company trainer. So this webinar is a little bit shorter than the usual ones we run, so it's going to run for 30 minutes. The agenda's there for you on the screen. So I'm just going to open up briefly talking about the legal applications and benefits of SCRAM. I'll then hand over to Ashley, who will talk in detail about how SCRAM works. I'll then cover how much it costs, and then we'll conclude with our usual question and answer session. Some of you have asked questions already as part of your registration, so thanks for that. We will answer those questions in the live webinar. If anybody else thinks of any questions during the 30 minutes, then please use the Q&A facility on the Zoom technology to ask your question. If we've got enough time, we will answer the question as well. If not, we will send you an email later today with an answer. So any questions you think of throughout the next 30 minutes, then please take the opportunity to ask them. Okay, so I thought a useful way of starting this was just to do a bit of a summary of the alcohol testing webinar that we ran in October, which I'm sure some of you attended. This will lead us nicely into talking about SCRAM. So what you can see on the slide there is the range of historical alcohol testing options that we offer at AlphaBiolabs, where it can be a number of different sample types. So for example, you can see there at the top, we can do a simple breath test, which will look at the previous 24 hours of alcohol consumed by the person taking the breath test. We can also do blood tests, which range from we would say the more superior PEth test, because it's a direct marker of alcohol. That looks back over the last month of alcohol consumption. We also have the CBT and LFT and MCV blood tests as well, which are indirect markers. So those markers can also, not just by alcohol consumption, but they can also be inflated by other factors as well. So that's why we would recommend PEth over it. But in some cases, they can go back as far as 3 months in terms of looking at the alcohol consumption over that period. We then, of course, have the head hair, which can test up to a 6-month overview, body hair up to 12 months, and then with nail clippings as well. So for fingernail clippings, we can look back over the previous 6 months, and toenail clippings going back up to 12 months. Now on this slide, I've just put SCRAM in there now, and also the PEth test on a repeated basis. So again, at Alpha, we can offer a repeat test for PEth. The way that works is every month a sample would be taken from your client, and then the result would look back over the previous month. They would then repeat that in month 2 and month 3, and for however many months is required, and we build up a historical pattern of the drinking levels of that particular client over that period of time. Now, the reason I mention it now is you might find with some testing providers, when you make an inquiry about SCRAM, they offer you repeat PEth testing as an alternative. Now, you can position it as an alternative, but in effect, it's really very much dependent on the circumstances, the particular case you're working on, the profile of your client, the other circumstances and factors around that, and ultimately what you're trying to achieve. So what outcome are you trying to achieve from that particular case? So I just wanted to put it there. SCRAM, which we're always going to talk about today, is more designed for real-time continuous alcohol monitoring. So it's not about the historical, it's about the now and the future, and identifying drinking events in real time. So as I say, so repeat PEth testing provides a retrospective view, allowing detection of historical consumption patterns. So the test detects PEth, which is a direct biomarker of alcohol. It will only appear in the blood if alcohol has been consumed. And each month, we would provide a report at the end of the month when we take the sample, which will confirm the different level of alcohol consumption each month over several months. So you can see in the table there, there's 3 different bands, if you like. So we would confirm for that previous month, your client has been abstinent or had a very low alcohol consumption over that month. It could be more of a sort of medium range, so it's a social or moderate alcohol consumption in the approximate month. And of course, it could also confirm that they have been drinking excessively in that previous month. Now, PEth is useful, obviously, in certain situations. It's also useful when daily or continuous monitoring isn't feasible for a specific client, and Ashley will touch on that in a moment. So just to sum up there, really, PEth is really used to measure historical drinking patterns on a month-by-month basis rather than real time, and this is where SCRAM comes in. So SCRAM is a bracelet. It sits just above the ankle and it continuously monitors for alcohol consumption in real time. So it can be applied in many different scenarios, including domestic violence cases where alcohol is a contributing factor, with drug users who often turn to alcohol once they are actively being tested for drugs. It can be used obviously with custody conditions, child visitation arrangements, and it's particularly beneficial at certain times of year, in particular, I would say over the festive season, where generally the level of drinking across the population will increase. So it's really useful around the sort of time of the festive season. And in family court as well, to assess the level of a parent's alcohol problem or to gather evidence to support acceptable drinking behaviours. Now, SCRAM is commonly court-ordered, or it's used in pre-proceeding cases with individuals who need to continuously abstain from alcohol, or they might drink, but they need to control their drinking habits on certain months, days, and times. But ultimately, it's to demonstrate compliance and accountability to make their parenting time safer. And just before I hand over to Ashley, just a couple of little scenarios, just to try and put it more into context, really. So we've got scenario one here. So a mother with a history of alcohol addiction wanted to have joint custody of her son. So she proactively agreed to wear a SCRAM bracelet for a 3-month period as part of a rehabilitation program. The first month was great. She demonstrated complete abstinence. There was no drinking events reported throughout that month. However, going into the second month, the SCRAM monitoring data did start to identify a number of drinking events, albeit at a low level. She was starting to drink again. So that information was very quickly fed back to the rehabilitation team and the program that she was part of. Certain adjustments were made, and as a result of that, going into month 3, she continued to wear the bracelet and once again demonstrated abstinence with 0 drinking events recorded. So the outcome was that whilst the mother was still not allowed joint custody, she was granted an increase in the amount of time spent with her child. And that's really because, she was open to wearing the bracelet. She, for the most part, she demonstrated the fact she wasn't drinking. So whilst it wasn't the outcome she really wanted, it was moving in the right direction. And the second scenario, a couple had separated and the father wanted joint custody of their 2 children, but the mother was concerned about him consuming alcohol around the children. The father admitted that he does drink, but he never drinks around the children. So he also agreed to wear a SCRAM bracelet for 3 months. And across the 3-month period, the reporting data showed that only drinking events occurred when the children was with their mother. So he did stand by his word and abstained from drinking completely when he had custody of the children. So the outcome was that the father was granted joint custody. So SCRAM is more beneficial in both the scenarios than repeat PEth testing, because in this case, the father is allowed to drink, but you want to monitor when he drinks and how he drinks. For example, single drinking episodes, looking at the daily drinking habits, etc. And that's something you can't do with repeat PEth testing, but you can with SCRAM. So in summary, SCRAM is highly regarded for its ability to provide continuous, reliable monitoring of alcohol consumption. Its use is widespread in legal settings for compliance monitoring, and it is also utilised in treatment programs to ensure adherence to sobriety goals. And with that, I'd like to hand over to Ashley, who's going to talk to you about how Scram works. Ashley.
Hello, good morning. Thank you for joining us. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about how the monitoring would work if this was an option for your client. So it comes in two parts, the Scram monitoring equipment. The first part is the bracelet that, like Andrew mentioned, is fitted to the client's ankle. So you can see that in the photograph there on the bottom right-hand side. It cannot be fixed to the client's wrist. It does need to be attached to the ankle, and it's both fitted and removed by a trained member of our staff, so we can be sure that it goes on the right person and that it stays on for the duration of the monitoring. The other parts of the equipment, what you can see on the screen now, is called a base station, and that's plugged in the client's home address or wherever they stay most frequently. And that is the device that takes the data from the bracelet and feeds it back into us. So that transmits the data to us, and then we can get in contact with you and report on that. And it works via a SIM card that's already fitted within the base station. Or if your client does have internet connection in their home, we can always link it up that way as well to enhance those readings going across. So they're the two bits of equipment that we use when we talk about Scram monitoring. So how does it work? As I said, the bracelet is fit to the ankle. The bracelet weighs about 160 grams. All the dimensions and things like that are available from our website if your client did want that information before agreeing to the terms. And it's usually worn for between 30 and 90 days, depending on the circumstances. So sometimes 30 days is sufficient. Sometimes it needs to be on for longer. We've had clients with them on for up to a year before, so it's totally dependent upon the case and what you're looking to prove or disprove. It's going to take a reading every 30 minutes, and that's going to happen for the duration of the monitoring period. So every 30 minutes, it's going to take a reading of any transdermal alcohol concentration and report that back into us. And then we'll compile all those readings and include them in the report once it's sent out to you. Notifications are generated through the base station, and they'll be fed back to you directly, and then you'll get those summary reports either weekly, monthly, or at the end of the monitoring period, depending on what your selection is when you instruct us. Other features of the bracelet, so it can differentiate between environmental exposure to things containing alcohol, such as cleaning products, and a consumption event, which is what we call them, a confirmed alcohol event, a consumption event, where your client has ingested alcohol. It's not that they've been around other people ingesting it, or that they've maybe used a cleaning product that contains it. It is very intelligent, and it can tell the difference between the two. And this is why we have confirmed alcohol events and then events that go unconfirmed, which we wouldn't notify you of because they don't meet the criteria to be an alcohol consumption event. And that's all done behind the scenes here. So we will analyse all of the readings, ensure that they are confirmed drinking events, and then only those events would be included in your report or be what you're notified of if required. It can also detect any tampering to the bracelet. So if a client, say, pulls their sock up their leg in between the bracelet and the ankle to try and stop the readings, it will notify us. It will also notify us if they've wedged an item between their leg and the bracelet to try and stop the readings from going through. It can detect all of that. And it can also detect if the client completely removes the bracelet. So if they took it off for any reason, it would let us know. Clients are able to do this. We do show them how to do it if needed, only in an emergency situation, but there is a certain place on the bracelet where you can cut through it and it would be able to be removed, but obviously we'd be notified of that, and it is only in emergency situations that we say that it should be done. So we can notify you of that as well, keep you up to date with that. And the bracelet is water resistant, so you can shower in it, go about your daily cleaning routine. You just can't fully submerge it in water. So if a client is wanting to have a bath, they would need to leave that one leg out of it so that the bracelet doesn't get fully submerged, and they wouldn't be able to go swimming in it So something to consider if you think your client is appropriate for this, but showering is absolutely fine. So reading the data and getting a report on it, as I said before, we're going to take a reading every 30 minutes with the bracelet, and that'll all be fed back into us here. And that's going to be what helps us build up that profile of someone's drinking habits. So as Andrew mentioned before, there are certain people that fit this program really well because they need to prove or disprove something, like the gentleman in scenario 2, who did drink and was aware that he drank and was able to drink when he didn't have his children in his care. But he was stating that he abstained during the time that they were with him. This is the ideal client for this type of program because it's going to show what his drinking events are, specifically what times of day he's doing them, what dates he's doing them on, and to what level he's consuming alcohol. So we can register anything from as little as 1 unit. And that's what would come up as your confirmed alcohol consumption. Those readings would then be processed by your dedicated case manager, who would then write up and send your reports. And they can also deal with any inquiries you have, any queries about any of the readings or any tamper or removal events. They can assist you all the way through the process with that. We will notify you of any alcohol consumption events within 24 hours of us receiving the notification. So once we are aware of it, we'll get in touch with you as soon as possible to report on that, but it will be within 24 hours. And as I mentioned earlier, we can do weekly or monthly reports. It's just whatever's suitable for yourselves. Knowing that you'll be notified of the consumption events anyway, monthly reports might be suitable. But if you are sending them off, for example, to court or to another party in the case, then weekly reports might be more beneficial. So we can work with you on that, what suits your particular case. When we get a reading through, I've spoken a lot about confirmed alcohol consumption events and direct ingestion of alcohol, but what does that look like on the report? So we're going to take a TAC reading, and I'll show you this, how it will be shown on the report in just a moment. But in order to get a confirmed alcohol event, there's a certain criteria that it needs to meet. And this is how we rule out those alcohol exposures to cleaning products and things like that. So we need a minimum peak TAC reading of 0.02, and we need 3 of them consecutively for it to be a confirmed alcohol consumption event. And then that's categorized based on the level as shown in the table below. So we have low, medium, and high drinking events, and we'll tell you what that means in relation to a TAC event, what that would kind of translate into if you were doing a breath alcohol test, just to give a bit more context around what the result means. And then also typically how many units you would have needed to consume to meet that criteria to make that event. And then I'll show you how this would be included on your report. So on the report, you would get a graph like this. It would state that it was a confirmed alcohol reading and the date in which the reading took place. So for this one, we received the reading through at just shy of 1:20 in the afternoon on the 5th of November. The event itself took place from 25 to 9 on the 4th of November, right the way through until the next morning at nearly 8:10. This was a TAC reading of 0.07, which meant it was a medium level drinking event. Now on the graph in front of you, you've got 3 lines. The line at the top, the red line, that's the temperature of the client. So this just helps us prove that it was still on the ankle of the client when the reading was taken. So it's still got that body temperature, and that's why you can see it fluctuates slightly throughout the day. The blue line is the IR voltage. That's what's getting the reflection off the ankle to be sure that it's definitely still fitted to the client. So that's a steady line across the board. There's a little bit of wavering in the middle, but just as it moves around on the ankle. It's also that line that would tell us if there was a tamper event happening, because that IR voltage would be disrupted. And then the line we're really interested in is the black line, the TAC line. So as we can see, the client started consuming alcohol at 25 to 9 on the 4th of November. They drank some alcohol and then it started to metabolize out of the system. And this is why this line starts to dip back down again. And then they had a further drinking event, which sent the line up again to the top to its peak at 0.073. And then eventually it metabolized all the way out of the client's system, and they became back to a baseline reading of 0 at 8:07 in the morning. So that would be a confirmed drinking event that we would notify you of, and then that would be included on the report, and that's how it's shown. And then you can link that back to the table that I just shown you to figure out how many units that's likely to have been for that event. So fitting and removal of the bracelet, we would come out to your chosen location to do the fitting, and this can be done within 2 days of instructing us. But obviously we can work to your timelines depending on what your requirements are. We ideally want to fit the bracelet in the client's home if possible, so that we can plug that base station in, make sure it's working, make sure it's got good signal. However, we can do it at other locations, so at court, at your offices, at one of our walk-in centres. We would just then need to either provide them with the base station, so they could take it and plug it in when they got home, or they could take it without the base station, but you wouldn't get those notifications because we're not able to receive the data without that base station plugged in. But we could discuss things like that with you if you thought that this was a suitable option for your client about where that could be fitted. We will require to take a photograph of the client when we put the bracelet on them, so we can show you exactly who we fitted the bracelet to, make sure it's on the right person. And we also ask that they provide photographic ID where possible. And then we'll fill in all of the paperwork, making sure the client understands what they can and can't do with the bracelet on, such as making sure they shower instead of submerging the bracelet in the bath. And they would sign consent to accept the liability for that and the understanding of what the requirements are. So I'm just going to pass you back over to Andrew, who will cover how much the Scram bracelet will cost.
That's great. Thanks very much, Ashley. Okay, so briefly, so how much does Scram CAM cost? Well, again, it obviously depends on the duration, how long you want your client to wear the bracelet for. But the prices do start from £395 for 30 days. There is an additional charge for the fitting and removal of the bracelet, which is £190. If you want the monthly reporting option, then there's no additional charge. But if you wanted weekly reporting, we would charge an extra £50 per month. However, because as Ashley mentioned, one of the key things we do, unlike some other providers, is we do that 24-hour notification. So we feel by the fact that you get that benefit, the monthly report is adequate enough. However, if you feel that a formal weekly report would be suitable as well, then obviously we can provide that. All our prices are legal aid agency approved, and we also have a price promise whereby if you do get a quote from an alternative provider, if you provide a copy of that quote to us, we will look at their price and we will beat it by 10%. We've also got, as you can see in the banner at the bottom there, we've actually got an offer at the moment of 15% off Scram monitoring, and that's for any quote we provide between now and the end of the year. Those quotes will still be valid. If you don't then instruct us until the new year, you will still get the 15% off. And as you've registered for this webinar, you don't need to put in the promotional code of SCRAM15. We will automatically apply that 15% discount to any quote that you request of us between now and the end of the year. Okay, so we'll just move on to the Q&A. And thank you. We have had 2 or 3 more questions come in while we've been talking. So thanks for that. In terms of time, there might be a couple of questions there we're not going to have time to answer now. But as I said at the start of the webinar, we will send that person or those people an email afterwards. You'll also all receive in this time tomorrow an email from us with a recording of the webinar. So you will have a copy of the slides on that recording as well. So just bear that in mind. Okay, so the first question is, again, some of these we've probably covered, but obviously people have asked during registration or before we covered it. So we might be going over a couple of things, but they're really, really good questions, actually. So for yourself, Ashley, when is it appropriate to use Scram? So what type of client and level of drinking?
So we can detect anything from 1 unit. So the level of drinking from kind of the low level side of things, there isn't really a minimum. The ideal client for Scram is someone who is compliant. So we ideally want someone who understands that the need to wear the bracelet and is agreeable to it. If you do have a client who's likely to keep cutting the bracelet off, it's not suitable for them. That's not the idea of it. It's a continual monitoring program. If you did have a client that was going to keep cutting it off, then PEth might be the more suitable test, where you just get them in once a month to do it. So we need someone who understands the benefit of the bracelet, that it's going to assist them in showing that pattern of alcohol consumption. It's ideal for someone who really is trying to either control their drinking or to reduce it or to abstain completely. If you have a client who's happy to wear it, but they are going to go out binge drinking a lot and drinking to excess, then again, it's not really designed for that type of person. It's someone who wants to prove the pattern of alcohol consumption and ideally try and improve it for their own benefit.
Thanks, Ashley. Okay, the next question, which I'll take, is what is the typical duration to use Scram? So as Ashley explained, I mean, we can do it for any length of duration. We would say typically it's between 30 and 90 days that we would monitor your client for. But for example, if let's say you wanted 60 days and we got towards the end of that period and you decided the client might benefit from extending that duration, then we can do that there and then. So really, yes, typically it would be between 30 and 90 days, but we can do any length of period that you require. Okay, next question for yourself, Ashley. How reliable are these tests? And should the removal of children be based on the outcome of them as a sole indicator of concern?
They are highly accurate testing methods, so the reports are reliable. It depends on your client's case as to whether this would be the sole reason why the placement of a child would be decided on. Can you do it this way if you thought that this was the best way to do it? Yes, it's reliable enough to do that. However, you're going to want to look at the bigger picture and see if there's other reasons that contribute to that decision or other factors that can influence it. But if you felt that alcohol was the only factor, for example, if a parent drank whilst the child was in their presence, then they would need to be removed. Then yes, you can absolutely base it on a SCRAM bracelet and the results of one.
Thanks, Ashley. The next question is about how we invoice for the use of the SCRAM bracelet. So how do you invoice for the use of the SCRAM bracelet? We do it monthly, so monthly invoices are sent to you and to any split party rather than invoicing at the end of the duration. This then really sort of spreads out the cost of the use of the bracelet and for all the notification and reporting throughout the agreed duration. Just conscious of time, so we've got to answer a couple more questions before we finish. So the last one for yourself, Ashley. This is a good one. So what may be considered an acceptable medical reason for wanting the bracelet removed? Are there any examples?
So I assume this is more in relation to what I mentioned about cutting the bracelet off. The main one that we see is that another suitable client actually for this type of testing would be someone who is pregnant, who's struggled with their alcohol intake. We get a few requests for them to be fit to women who are pregnant to monitor their alcohol consumption during pregnancy and then help make a decision on the placement of the child once it's born. So yeah, if they went into labour, we would advise them to cut the bracelet off. So we would show them how to do it. That's probably the most common reason that we get. If the client was rushed to hospital and needed, for example, a CT scan or an MRI scan, the hospital usually want to remove it. So we would do that. We would advise them to do that then. The only other thing I can really think of is the bracelet does contain nickel. So if you had a client with a nickel allergy and they had a bad reaction to it, they might want to take that off, but usually they're aware of that before it's fitted, and we would offer an alternative method such as PEth testing instead to avoid any allergic reaction from the nickel in the bracelet. But they're the main reasons, mainly pregnancy and labour and things like that.
Thanks very much, Ashley. Okay, last question, which I'll answer. Do you have to charge up the SCRAM bracelet? So the bracelet has a battery life of up to 90 days, after which it will need to be replaced. So obviously, if the duration is 30 or 60 days, or even 90, then you don't need to worry about that. But if we're doing a longer duration than 90 days, we'll arrange for somebody to come out and replace the battery at a time convenient to you. There is a small charge for this, but yeah, it's only really if you go into sort of over 90 days. Okay, as I say, there are a couple more questions there, but I'm just conscious we're all already overrun. So we'll send emails to those people. So all that remains for me to say is thank you very much for your time this morning. I hope you found that of interest. Could I kindly ask you, there will be a very brief webinar survey before you log off. It will only take you about a minute to complete. If you could kindly do that for us, your feedback is really invaluable for planning future AlphaBiolabs webinars. So please, that would be great if you wouldn't mind doing that. So for any more information or to request a quote, you can contact our new inquiry team or indeed your case manager. The main methods of contact are there: the phone number, our website address, and the best email address to contact us on is testing@alphabiolabs.com. We're also on social media on LinkedIn and X, formerly Twitter. If you're on there, then please do give us a follow and we'll follow you back. So all that's left for me to say is firstly, big thanks to Ashley. And also a big thank you to all of you again for giving up your time this morning. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your day. And please do get in touch with us if you think we can help you further. Thanks very much and see you soon. Bye.